All right, so live on Facebook. Let's check Rumble. That's working. Cool. Quick prayer. Father God, thank you for the courage to be on the front lines. Thank you for all of these beautiful patriots and the courage you've given them. I pray for everyone who is sick and all of those who love them, for strength and for faith. I pray for all those that have been jabbed. I pray for their health. I pray that a cure come through, but most importantly, that people wake up to the fact that they need a cure. And I pray that the power, your hand be seen in the power of prayer and the healing of people. We know that we need to come to our knees and come to you in order for your intercession. And I pray that we all have the wherewithal and the insight to bring as many people with us as we can. Pray for our families. And I pray that you take this broadcast and teach us what you want us to see. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Okay. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to start with a few of Dr. Taylor Marshall's videos, because I really like him, and I really like what he does. And also he's covering the prophecy of God Bandal, which I've talked to you all about. He's going to first go into the Satanic Grammys. I know that a lot of people have covered these, but I still want his take on it, and I want y'all to see his take on it. Okay? All right, let's get started.
Grammys, I didn't. You saw an overweight man named Sam Smith mocking the afterlife, mocking God, and mocking Christ. Today we're going to talk about, what is Satanism? Is it worshipped of the horned Satan, or is it something much worse? I'm going to surprise you with that today. Let's take a look at this degenerate display. Here it is. Cages, flames, fire, everyone cheering, of course. Oh, this is the best here. Sponsored by Pfizer.
If Pfizer didn't show their agenda there.
Now you know it's not a conspiracy. Turn this trash off. You now know it's not a conspiracy. You got all the Hollywood people. You got the entire music industry there together. And do they mock Buddhism? Do they mock Islam? Do they mock Judaism? No. They mock Christianity. Every single time, every single year. They're all together. They're all aligned, sponsored by Pfizer. Now, what they're mocking is what they know that they deserve. Read Romans chapter 1. In Romans chapter 1, St. Paul talks about the depraved mind, people who rebel against God. And he says, everyone knows deep down that God exists. Just by looking at creation, you know that a God exists. But they suppress the knowledge of God, and therefore God, St. Paul says in Romans 1, gives them over to a depraved mind. And this, my friends, is what a depraved mind looks like. They know that they are in rebellion against God. In fact, in Romans 1, it even says that God gives men over to lust for men and women in lust for women. And if you know about Sam Smith, I had to look him up. He's engaged in that quote-unquote lifestyle. But this is all worship of self as depicted in this scene right here. I'm going to come back. I'm going to circle back to what this means here in the...
Why do they always have their tongue out, right? You'll notice that a lot of these actors, musicians, they have the satanic sign, they have the circle around their eyes, and they always have their tongue out.
Cult. But yeah, this is full-on Satanism. Here he is with his posse of strange people. One of those that looks like a woman apparently actually is a trans vestite, actually a dude. Not sure which one. But I want to come back to this image right here. What is Satanism? Satanism You'll hear Satanists say, we don't really worship the biblical Satan. They do in a way, but Satanism is the perfect worship of self. In the Bible, when you look at the fall of Satan, it's depicted in the Apocalypse, chapter 12. It's depicted in Isaiah, and it's also depicted in Ezekiel, with hints of it in Genesis. Satan wants to worship himself. And his goal, yes, he wants people to acknowledge him, to adore him. But the path to that, he knows, is that every person, if they deny worshiping God, their default setting is to worship themselves. You see that with Madonna. Don't want to put a picture of her up, but she's worshiping herself. She's trying to go back to her youth, and she's got so much filler and surgery and plastic. It's a worship of her own self. And that can be with the billionaires. It can be with the supermodels. It can be with the actors. All of these people are ultimately wanting self-worship to become their own God. And that's really the fall of Satan. According to tradition, if you look at Revelation chapter 12, when he sees that the Son of God is going to become human through the immaculate womb of a virgin, that's the sign in the heavens in Revelation chapter 12, Satan says non serviam. That's Latin. He didn't speak Latin back then, but it's the Latin saying, I will not serve.
I want to bring something up with that. The worship of self, wanting to be gods. What does New Age always talk about? Doesn't it talk about you're your own God? You have God inside of you, right? There's always like some kind of a twist on it. And I think that's what he's talking about. You know, don't feel bad about yourself. We love you. The songs, Beyonce's music. You want to feel good. You deserve to feel good. All of that is all God inside of you, worshiping yourself. Okay, departing from Africa, Pope Francis renews call to end anti-sodomy laws. Why? Because Pope Benedict put out a book to be published after he died, that all of these bishops and cardinals and Pope Francis were all engaging in sodomy and orgies and things in the Vatican. All of these filthy people that call themselves, Christ, followers of Christ, which is a bunch of BS. And he's the worst. He's sick. The Jesuits are the worst. And I'm Catholic, guys. I can say that. Okay. The pontiff repeated his January 25th assertion that the criminalization of homosexuality is a problem that cannot be ignored. Aboard the papal plane, in a novel in the Air Press conference with the head of the Church of England and the head of the Church of Scotland, Pope Francis repeated his remarks that first made on January 25th about the need to end the anti-sodomy laws. Noting that some 50 countries have anti-sodomy laws, Francis said as he was returning from a 6-day trip to Africa, the criminalization of homosexuality is a problem that cannot be ignored. Now, I'm not saying that things have to happen bad to homosexuals. I don't think they can help it, but to go all out and say anti-sodomy is, sodomy is whatever, when he's been engaging in it, is like, it's just horrible. While the laws criminalize behaviors and not inclinations, Pope Francis, the laws criminalize behavior, not inclinations. Pope Francis conflated the two concepts in his remarks, saying of the anti-sodomy laws, persons with homosexual tendencies are children of God. God loves them. God accompanies them. Condemning a person like this is a sin. I totally agree with that part. But for him to go all out on this subject, I really honestly, I don't know where to stand on that, So I don't discriminate against anybody. But for him to come out on anti-sodomy when these people are guilty of sodomizing children and each other and nuns, that's sick. Okay. So I've talked about the prophecy of Garabandal, the appearances of the Virgin Mary, and he's going to go into this a little bit more. They are not recognized by the church. Why is that? Makes you think. Okay.
Some of the video footage is controversial. So people will say this is supernatural, this is of God. Other people will say there's something wrong here. It's preternatural. This could be demonic. And I'm referring to them walking or running backwards and then them being so heavy they can't be picked up. I'm sure you have spoken to Conchita on this. Can you maybe address the concerns of people who bring up these two elements?
So let's address the worst slander against Garabandal is that it's demonic. Think about the 4 years that the Blessed Mother was there. What was said? What was her message, really? We must lead good lives. What did she say? Go to church, receive communion, go to frequent confession, say the rosary, wear a scapula. How does that benefit the devil in any way, shape, or form? That's 4 years of constant messaging that she gave everyone. And it wasn't so much about these predictions of the future. She just simply said, lead good lives and do these things. The second problem is most of the ecstasies were done beginning with a rosary. How is that demonic? Let's go to the walking backwards. A million people have said this to me. I said, have you ever walked backwards in your life? Well, then you're demonic. Do you know why? I said they were in ecstasy inside the church in front of the Blessed Sacrament. And when Mary led them out of the church, she led them out of the church walking backwards as a sign of respect for the Eucharist. And the theme of the Eucharist runs all through Garabandal. One of the greatest forms of proof of Garabandal is what's called the little miracle. So many people started coming to Garabandal. Conchita wanted a sign so undeniable that no one could refute it. And she begged the Blessed Mother to show something. Give us a sign that no one can refute. So St. Michael said, I'm going to give you 15-day notice of a Eucharistic miracle. And 15 days later, Conchita knelt down outside. She stuck out her tongue, and this is on film. It's on, still camera, hundreds of witnesses. She sticks out her tongue, there's nothing there, and immediately an illuminated host appears on her tongue. So that's irrefutable to me. Predicted in advance, 15 days in advance, witnessed by hundreds, on film that her tongue was empty, and this host appeared out of nowhere.
If someone were to say Garabandal is disapproved, is it disapproved or not yet approved? Is it in limbo? What is this? What is the status? What is the proper way of understanding this? Because already I've received a massive amount of people saying this is fake, don't dare talk about it, it's super bad. Then there's all these other people saying this is great, so glad you're talking about it. I want to be completely open. I always try to be completely open about what I'm thinking, what I'm studying. And so I'm not convinced one way or the other, but I'm kind of in awe over if this is legit. And then these connections with Padre Pio and all that. So what is there? Is it disapproved or non-approved? What's the way we understand?
You know, if you want to use my term, it's awaiting approval. So first of all, there is no official ruling from the Vatican. So let's make that crystal clear. And as a matter of fact, because people don't really delve into this, they believe what they want to believe, or they take bits and pieces of little stories. This is so long ago. If you go to modern day, Bishop Zamora was bishop from 2007 through 2015. He changed the course of everything in Garabandal because no bishop had ever said Mass in Garabandal. He did 2 Masses at Garabandal. And at one of them, he actually took the time to kiss a crucifix that Mary kissed. So it's not that these bishops are all hardliners against Garabandal. Again, the early ones who did no investigation whatsoever and never submitted anything to the Vatican, their opinion is worthless, honestly, because they were lying. They did nothing of any consequence to try to prove or disprove. All they wanted to know was, we're going to try and shut this down. This overwhelming evidence for 4 years that the Blessed Mother appeared there. You can't explain the things that the girls did. There's no natural explanation. It has to be supernatural. It has to be divine intervention. But Zamora, in those years, he went to Garabandal twice. That gave a great uplift to the Garabandal movement because you finally had a bishop who took the time, did his due diligence, looked into everything that was being said, looked into the countless miracles that people were cured of at Garabandal from kissed items, and celebrated the two masses and kissed the crucifix. So
What year did that bishop go to Garabandal?
I believe it was 2012 was the first mass that he did there.
Wow.
And again, I can send you documentation of that too.
What's the name of the Facebook page?
The Message of Garabandal.
Remember, 2012 was the time slice that was given. That was supposed to be the end of the world. That interesting. Global warning of conscience. Then later, 8 days before Conchita tells people Miracle of Pines in April between 8th and 16th on a Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Spanish time, young male martyr of the Eucharist.
The Message of Garabandal on Facebook.
Is that this one? This one's a little bit longer.
Get a second pad and place horizontally where your goes.
Every month for 5.
Here, let me silence that. Okay, I think it is.
All right, so since I did a video on Garabandal, as you might imagine, Glenn, I've had 100 people say Garabandal is fake, and I've had 100 people say, I'm so glad you're covering Garabandal. It's so amazing. So tell us about whether this, I mean, I've always avoided Garabandal because I've been told repeatedly it's not approved, and I don't spend any time usually on anything that's not approved. However, as I began to look into it and study, I found some pretty powerful references to Padre Pio, St. Pio, and his connection to Garabandal. And then I was, of course, interested in these modern day connections of things that were being prophesied by Conchita at Garabandal that seem to be unfolding in our own time, with Pope Benedict dying on December 31st, the Pope, Moscow, the 4 popes in succession. So is this approved? And then what is Padre Pio's connection? But let's begin with, is this approved? Should we even be talking about this?
Absolutely. There's a lot of confusion about whether it's approved or condemned. Or it's not approved. It's not condemned either. Now, you brought up Padre Pio, and thank you for doing that, because he really is the savior of Garabandal. It was met with so much resistance in the beginning, and I'll get into why the original bishop caused so much confusion on purpose. But let's cover Padre Pio, because so many people feel he's infallible what he says. So in 1961, Joey Lamangino is exhausted, and his doctor tells him, you know, Joey, you need a rest. And I don't know if you know the story of Joey. He was blinded at the age of 16. He was filling up a truck tire, and it exploded, and the rim hit him in the forehead. It creased his forehead and severed all the olfactory nerves that he had. So he instantly went blind and lost sense of smell. And he didn't wake up until the feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel from a coma. 16 years later, his uncle takes him to Italy for a vacation. And as they're at I believe it's a 5 a.m. mass for Padre Pio that he would always do, Padre Pio walks past Joey and pinches him on the cheek and just keeps going. And Joey feels a sense of either holiness or something that, kind of hits his body and starts to change him spiritually. Now, 2 years later, 63, he goes back with his uncle, only he goes to confession this time to Padre Pio. And he's telling Padre Pio his sins, and Padre Pio says, is that it? And he goes, yeah. And then Padre Pio goes on to tell him all of his sins. And Joey starts to cry. And, he says, Joey, I called Jesus and Mary for you. And with that, 2 days later, Joey goes back to see Padre Pio again. And at this meeting, Padre Pio comes up to Joey, and Joey throws his arms back in protection. He smells roses. Padre Pio touched his forehead where it was severed, and he instantly regains his sense of smell. So it's a miracle. And at that meeting, he says, that he's talking to him, and he says, I understand these apparitions in Garabandal. Is it true? And Padre Pio says, yes. And he says, should I go there? And he says, yes. And Joey goes to Garabandal, and it's the first of countless visits. And, he becomes very close friends with Conchita. And, Conchita eventually winds up moving back to New York. And so that's the initial tie to Padre Pio. He was always a great defender of Garabandal.
All right. Now, one of the things that people who have contacted me said, hey, Garabandal is not real, is they speak of the man who regained his sense of smell with Padre Pio. But apparently there was some prophecy about him getting his eyesight back, and he died blind. And so naysayers say, this is proof that there's something wrong with Garabandal. Can you speak to that?
Sure, I can. Okay, so we're talking again about Joey Lamangino, who, I described earlier, went to Padre Pio several times. The prophecy was that Mary said her exact words were, she told Conchita, was that Joey will see on the great day of the miracle. That was the exact quote, okay? So the inference is, yes, he sounds like he's getting a new set of eyes so that he can see the miracle. But that was the exact quote. He will see on the day of the miracle. Well, he's going to see it from heaven now. But I can understand where the confusion comes from.
Okay, so Glenn, she didn't say he will regain his sight. She said he will see. That
he will see on the great day of the miracle. Now, because of my friendship with Conchita, I had heard a rumor some time ago that when Joey was passing away, he had suffered greatly the last few years of his life. I believe it was multiple heart attacks, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 10. He fell down a flight of stairs. The doctors accidentally gave him the wrong medicines. He had reactions. I mean, the man just suffered terribly the last several years of his life. And I had heard a rumor that a priest was talking to him, and he said that he was going to offer up, in exchange for his eyesight, that the church accept and approve Garabandal. So I called Conchita. I said, did you hear this rumor? And she says, it wasn't a priest. I said, oh, do you know who it was? She goes, yeah, it was me. I was there. So now she's telling me that that's what Joey said. That was his offer, that he would forego his sight and life for the acceptance of Garabandal.
Now, is there I thought there was something more about Padre Pio. Didn't he have another statement, and didn't he leave some things to Conchita? And does she still have them? Can you connect those dots?
Yeah, sure. Upon his passing, Conchita was notified by one of Padre Pio's closest friends, Father, I think it was Senator Manaro. I'm sorry about the pronunciation. Anyhow, he contacts Conchita, and he says, I have some items for you. Could you meet me in Lourdes? And he presents Conchita with one of Padre Pio's bloody gloves with a piece of bandage on it, his personal rosary, and one of the veils that covered his face during his wake.
So let me just tell you guys, Padre Pio, and he was very embarrassed by it. He had the stigmata, which is the wounds on Jesus' hands and feet. His hands and feet would bleed. And so he was very embarrassed by that. People would come to Mass just to see that. And he wore gloves. So one of the gloves that he was giving him was one of the gloves that was being given to him was one of the blood, the bleeding from in his hands from the stigmata. Now, they're talking about the miracle. There's going to be a warning, there's going to be a miracle, and there's going to be a chastisement. And this is where the warning is when everybody sees their life flash before them, and they have an opportunity to choose Christ. And then there's the miracle where there's an illumination. And then there's the chastisement where those who did not choose Christ would feel just horrific, would just be the burning that we've all been talking about. But search that. Prophecies of God Bandal. Okay, so White House dismisses report that claims U.S. blew up Nord Stream pipeline last year. So this is coming right out again. Gas leak in the Baltic Sea from Nord Stream, photographed from the east from the Coast Guard's aircraft on September 27, 2022. Very interesting. White House officials on February 8th dismissed a report from an investigative journalist that claims the United States was behind the sabotage of the Nord Stream gas pipelines in 2022. This is utterly false and complete fiction, Adrienne Watson, a spokesperson for the White House National Security Council, said in a statement to news outlets on February 8th. A State Department spokesperson issued a similar comment to Reuters. Longtime investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, a former reporter with the New York Times, isn't he missing, Seymour Hersh? And the New Yorker magazine, who first gained prominence in 1969 for his reporting on the My Lai massacre during the Vietnam War, published a report on his Substack page on February 8 titled How America Took Out the Nord Stream Pipeline that cited unnamed sources for his claims. Last June, the Navy divers operating under the cover of a widely publicized midsummer NATO exercise, NATO exercise known as Ball Tops 22, planted the remotely triggered explosives that 3 months later destroyed 3 of the 4 Nord Stream pipelines, according to a source with direct knowledge of the operational planning, Hersh wrote. Tammy Thorpe, a spokesperson for the Central CIA, similarly said in a statement that this claim is completely and utterly false, right? Because you're probably behind it, CIA. Several European countries carried out investigations into the cause of the explosions, which occurred in September 2022, but came up with a few answers. The Russian government has categorically denied that was behind the blasts at the pipelines, which it jointly operated with Germany. Hersh, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, went on to say that the White House's decision to sabotage the pipelines came after more than 9 months of highly secret back-and-forth debate inside Washington's national security community about how to best achieve that goal. For much of the time, the issue was not whether to do the mission, but how to get it done with no overt clue as to who was responsible. This is not kiddie stuff, the aforementioned unnamed source told him. Hersh didn't provide any more details about the person, including whether they worked for the U.S. government, but that person noted that such an attack would be an act of war. During all of his scheming, the alleged source told the 85-year-old Hersh, some working guys in the CIA and the State Department were saying, don't do this, it's stupid, and will be a political nightmare if it comes out. According to a Substack post, divers operating from a Norwegian Alta mine hunting vessel used a mixture of oxygen, nitrogen, and helium streaming from their tanks and plant-shaped C4 charges on the 4 pipelines with concrete protective covers before detonating the explosives. Again, he cited unnamed sources, a practice that has long been the subject of criticism against Hersh's previous reporting. When Hersh claimed years ago that the Obama White House told lies about the killing of terror mastermind Osama bin Laden, what true, all true, a critic within the Washington Post in 2015 noted that Hersh relied at least 55 times on an anonymous retired senior intelligence official. Russia's foreign ministry said on February 8th that the United States has to answer questions following Hersh's reporting. In response to that report, Russia's foreign ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova called on the White House to issue a statement of the facts. Moscow has repeatedly said the West was behind last September's explosions affecting on Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines, multi-billion-dollar infrastructure projects that carried Russian gas to Germany under the Baltic Sea. Investigators from Sweden and Denmark, in whose exclusive economic zones the explosions occurred, have said the ruptures were a result of sabotage, but haven't said who they believe was responsible. Construction of Nord Stream 2, designed to double the amount of gas Russia could send directly to Germany under the sea, was completed in September 2021, but was never put into operation after Berlin shelved Certification just days before Moscow sent its troops into Ukraine in February. Yep. All right, guys, it's time to look at this. Look at the banking system. Banks admit the collapse is coming and they don't want you to know about it. Now, they cover a lot of stuff we've covered off and on, and especially the footage from the FDIC meeting. And also, I've talked about the islands of Cyprus, where they took people's money. So this is going to bring up a lot of stuff. Plus, I played Santa Surfing had talked about how people's money was disappearing from Bank of America, and they are bringing more proof of that, plus some tweets. So let's get started.
That not all of your money is in your bank account. Perhaps you've noticed that your direct deposits are having issues. Maybe you've got a direct deposit, but all of it's not there. Maybe a portion of it is missing for some reason. Have you experienced this? Let us know. We actually have a poll up right now, and you can drop us a comment below if you're watching us later. You're not alone, though, if you're experiencing this, because, in fact, we here at Redacted have been hearing from a number of you. And as many of you have said now, we've had thousands of people vote in our poll, and they've all been experiencing issues. Turns out you're not alone in this. We're going to have more on exactly what's happening to these bank accounts in just a moment. But first, something big is happening to our money supply. And the banking system is starting to freak out a little bit. They don't say this publicly, but they're starting to freak out. And my question is, are we about to learn that the emperor has no clothes?
I have a question.
Yeah, fire away.
Just to see if it's related, because I just had this recently. Never had it happen before. I have an Apple credit card. It's backed by Goldman Sachs. And generally when I make my payment, that money is available instantly. I made a payment this week, and I called them. I was like, this money isn't showing up. They said, yeah, you've got a 10-day hold now on that money. It already came out of my bank, but it is not showing on the Apple card because they said it's going to take 10 days. I'm like, 10 days? So I asked for it to be escalated, and they said they'll escalate it, but it'll take 10 days or so for somebody to respond.
Which is so interesting, because this is one of the main arguments behind going to a Bitcoin type or a blockchain type currency, is that you wouldn't have to go through this ancient infrastructure, that money would be immediately available, although it's a much less efficient transaction. Blockchain transactions take a lot longer than, say, bank-related transactions, but at least there would not,
I thought it was the opposite.
No. I think that
the interviews that I've done on blockchain with blockchain technologists say it's instantaneous, and whereas the wire transfers can take
for
hours.
Consumer purchases, they cannot process consumer purchases in the same speed as say
like if you go to the store.
Yes,
those transactions.
Yes. But say bank to bank, person to person transfer would be much more efficient. So it's interesting that this is proving itself to us before our very eyes.
So, are we looking at the emperor has no clothes here? Or are we, to put it another way, are we learning now that the banks have no money in their vaults and they're ready to take your money instead?
Yep.
Just yesterday, Bank of America issued this alert. Bank of America still forecasting 2023 recession, Fed action not enough. An odd alert actually saying that they're forecasting a massive recession for 2023. And they went further to say that the federal government is not doing enough to stop it. What the federal government is doing won't stop it. It's odd that they're putting this out. So just to put a pin in that for a moment, because Bank of America, we'll use that name because Bank of America making this statement. So just remember Bank of America for a moment. But first, really important to provide some context. And for that, we need to go back to the year 2013. Travel with me, if you will, back to the Mediterranean island of Cyprus. In 2013, following the collapse of the housing market in the United States, that calamity flowed to Europe in a domino effect for the small Mediterranean country of Cyprus. Remember this?
Outside the banks, the lines are long, customers worried.
You don't have cash now, can't do anything.
The banks haven't opened for 7 days, so Cyprus is becoming a cash society, and yet it's hard to get cash.
No accounts, no cards, no nothing.
And so what will they do?
God knows. Suicide.
Increasingly, this is happening. What happened?
There's no money, and I couldn't get any money out, and then my card won't come out.
So not only is there no money, but then you take my card as well. It was particularly devastating. Tourism dried up, unemployment skyrocketed, commercial property prices plummeted 30% in value, and the Cypriot banks had a lot of exposure to local property, which was overvalued. And when the economy collapsed, all these properties lost tons of value. The banks suddenly didn't have collateral to cover the money in these banks. I went to the bank to try to get money out of the bank. Sorry, unavailable, they said. No money, you can't come here. So if the bank had $1 billion of your money or of the people's money, it spent your money on other investments and on loans, loaning out money. So it didn't actually have any of your money in the bank. That was the real secret. That, of course, is the dirty secret of the banking sector, right? It's called fractional reserve banking.
And if you get The Creature of Jekyll Island, and you can get it on Audible if you want, if it's easier for you to listen, like it is for me, that starts really giving you history of the Federal Reserve, to which it's now come out that they sunk the Titanic.
And it used to be that they only had to keep 10% of your money in the bank, and they could lend out the rest of it. So the law was 10%. You put in $100, the bank had to keep $10 in the bank. They could lend out the other 90 in a loan, a mortgage to somebody else, right? That's how it works. Then when COVID hit, they scrapped that. No more 10%. Now they could literally give 100% of your money away in form of loans, mortgages. So if you went down to your local bank, hey, is my money in this bank? No, it's not. It's gone. It's literally not here. And if you try to get a deposit or a withdrawal, good luck, they'll tell you to come back another day. That's how it works. So keep none of it in the bank because, you know, we're lending it fully out. The idea was ridiculous, right? Like, why during COVID was this in an effort to try to help the banks? Like, lend out 100% of your money, the average person's money, because we need the banks to be able to be saved, not you.
I'm not sure. So that, well, I mean, it's not like they lowered any lending requirement to civilians or to, customers. What were you going to say, Philip?
I was just going to say, because it was a perfect time when everybody was so distracted with other things that nobody's really going to be paying attention to the fact that the banks are now kind of changing their own rules and Congress is helping them along so that they can make more money.
And we and we accepted all changes as COVID related. Like, oh yeah, world's screwed up. I guess that's what needs to happen.
Right. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Well, not we, but yeah.
Or is this planned obsolescence because they're trying to say, hey, the banking system is screwed. Guess what? We have the solution, a digital federal currency. Let's move to that, and you'll be safe.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps, yeah. And we'll be able to track and monitor everything. So the money doesn't actually exist. It's not real currency. It doesn't actually exist anywhere. Just, all it is ones and zeros on a Fed balance sheet somewhere. That's all it is. It's not actual currency. So these Cypriot banks in Cyprus suddenly needed help after this run of money. And the European Union said, sorry, we're not going to bail you out. You need to use another tool at your disposal known as a bail-in, meaning the billions of dollars that you have in your account from random depositors, you can feel free to use that money. You can take the life savings of regular people to cover your debts. When people went to the banks to get their money out, they were told it wasn't available to them. Why? Because the banks took it. Regular working people lost their life savings because it was confiscated by the banking system. The EU would only cover up to 100,000 euro. Just like in the United States, we have the FDIC, which covers a little over $200,000. But what happens if you actually have more money than that in savings? Sorry, that's all up for grabs. They can take it. According to the law, and that's exactly what happened in Cyprus. They took all of that extra money, all of it, billions. In fact, depositors in 2 different Cypriot banks lost billions when the savings were confiscated in order to protect the island's banking system. They took all of it. Again, this is known as a bail-in, not a bail-out. So what is a bail-in? A bail-in is different than a government bailout where the federal government will swoop in with money to save a failing bank or business. A bail-in uses the money that's already deposited into the accounts to save itself from financial disaster and financial collapse. In other words, it's when the bank steals your money in order to cover its debts. And it's all perfectly legal, by the way. After the 2008-2009 financial collapse, The UK government, for instance, and the European Union, and the United States, under the Dodd-Frank Act, added the bail-in as a financial tool to help the banks save themselves. Here's a issue from the Bank of England.
Okay, so I just want to read this real quick. Marianne Devine Barrett says, okay, let me write this out. Several times when going through the drive-thru, they are closed and not available to give you money. It's very odd that you have to go into the bank and will tell you that you need to choose a lower amount. It's happened at a few different branches to me. Now, Marianne said, Bank of America. I also have a friend that uses Bank of America. Several branches in Rhode Island have closed. She had to go to several different branches to withdraw her money. Guys, I'm going to tell you, you need to be pulling out 2 to 3 months of income if you have it from the banks, because if everything crashes, I still know what that means as far as, well, I've already said, get oil, sugar, things that people are going to want to be trading, small little bottles of alcohol. People will want that, and that just start stocking up any way you can for stuff that you know people use on a regular basis. If you have chickens, that's going to be a great trading thing. I think it's going to end up good. It's just short term. It's going to be scary. Okay, let's keep going.
Executing a bail-in, an operational guide from the Bank of England. How to do it. Here's a handbook. Here's my favorite headline. I love this headline. Why bail-ins will be the new bailouts.
Well, if you think about it, countries from Ireland to Hungary to Argentina have all done this.
Acted have been hearing from a number of.
I'm going to tell you, I grew up in Brazil and Argentina, and I always forget to tell you guys this piece about me. So I'm a third culture patriot. I'm a third culture kid. And third culture kids grow up in countries that are not their own. I wonder where I was. Hang on. Here we are. And so I have pretty much a global perspective just from growing up in those countries. I was born here. My dad was transferred when I was 2. I came back at 19. So when they speak about Argentina, they bankrupted the country. But I guess they bankrupted the people, because if they did this, I know that what they did do is they sold all of the oil and gas to other countries so that Argentina owns nothing. So Argentina's really developed their wine industry, and wines are really good, and that's one way that they're making money. And of course the beef and the cattle and the ranches. However, this must be why the country's so poor now and the people are so poor. It was a wonderful country.
Bail-ins will be the new bailouts.
Well, if you think about it, countries from Ireland to Hungary to Argentina have all done this. And according to Andrew Henderson's book, Nomad Capitalist, he says, with over $25 trillion in retirement in the U.S. alone, it's not that far-fetched to assume that your broke government will succumb to the temptation to dip into those retirement funds, especially as we see the national debt ratcheting it up with elevated military budgets. 11 countries and counting have done so in the not so distant past.
I didn't even know it was that many.
So it's not without precedent. 11 countries have just said, we're broke, you're not, we're going to borrow from you.
It's crazy that they literally can just take your money, and this is the new normal now.
And I don't even think we're going to borrow from you. We're just going to take it, because to my knowledge, they didn't give the money back.
So in Cyprus, all of these people who were ripped off by the banks went to court to try to get their money back. And here's what happened. The European court just threw it out. Sorry. Dismissing the compensation claim. Sorry, it's legal. They were allowed to take this money. Sorry, under these laws, the banks can just take this money. Doesn't matter. Over the past 24 hours, there have been many reports of banks across Africa taking people's money. When they go to get answers, they're being shut down. No access to ATMs. This is Axis Bank customers trying to use ATMs, but they can't. Which they watch as rich customers inside the bank are walking out with bags of money, but they're not allowed to access the ATMs outside. See the metal bars? I'll show you this. Watch. This is Nigeria.
This is Access Bank at Ifako. While a lot of customers are standing outside to have access to the ATM, the security guards locked the compound, the access to the ATM, took some people inside, collected their ATM cards, and have been giving them money in bulk. Where they are, look at the people. Look at the people they allow. They allow these people in to give them bulk. They give them access to bulk cash. While their customers are out there, restricted from having access to the ATM. This is GT Bank at Ifako, opposite Zenith Bank. Access Bank, opposite Ifako.
So, just trying to get access to some money, my own money in my own bank, in my own ATM, can't do it. But if you were plugged in and you had access, then you could go inside the bank, they hand you bulk pallets of cash to be able to take home. So that's happening at Access Bank. Here's Zenith Bank. This is also happening. Zenith Bank, customers at Zenith Bank are reporting that money's being stolen from their accounts. And when they take to social media to report it, their tweets are being removed. So Zenith Bank, here's just one example. Zenith Bank is removing the tweets I made. Your bank is cramming people out of their hard-earned money, and you're blaming customers for missing money in your accounts.
Oh, I'm so glad Twitter's on that one. Thank you, Twitter.
Thanks. I don't know who's if enough bots kind of get onto it and then they cancel out the accounts or something, or there's an algorithm thing where people, jump on it. So they get all these bank people to do it or whatever. Who knows? And in the United States, back to Bank of America, which just issued a big warning about a coming recession in 2023. A recession they're warning the federal government isn't doing enough to stop. Customers of Bank of America recently demanded answers when money went missing from their accounts. Customers started showing up in the lobbies of Bank of America branches demanding to know, hey, where's the money that's supposed to be in my account? It's not there. Or it's less than it should be. What are you guys doing? Before they arrived, they were told to call customer service. So they got on the phone with customer service, and customer service didn't help them at all. So they came down to the bank branches, and they're showing up. And there's long lines of people waiting to get answers about what's going on with their money. So, and they don't want you to do this. Of course, the banks don't want you to come to them physically anymore. Banks have moved mostly digitally. In fact, if certain bank accounts that you have will actually penalize you for going to the teller. They want you just to use the digital banking services because they don't want to have an interaction with you. Here's just one example of people showing up demanding their money at Bank of America. Watch.
So I'm at Bank of America and everybody's missing money. I'm also missing money over $1,300 and they're telling me to call customer service. And they keep hanging up on people. This another person here is also missing money. So we're trying to see what's going on. Money's missing today and we need our money. And they're already telling us to call customer service. And customer service ain't doing nothing about it. So just a heads up, if anybody's experiencing this, please let us know because this is not right. I'm missing $1,400 from my account, and they're telling me that there's no way they can help us. This guy's missing money too. This other person is missing money too. And you missing money too? There you go. So this is not something that's just one person. This is everybody's happening to them. And this is crazy. This is very crazy. Yes, Bank of America decided to take people's money without their consent. And we're asking what's going on, and they're giving us a runaround. Everybody for the same thing, man. Same thing.
See someone in the chat saying, Hail Hydra. Frightening.
Yeah.
We're also hearing reports of this happening to customers at Wells Fargo and Chase Bank. Let us know in the chat what bank you have and where you're experiencing this. So far, in this poll we have up here during our live stream, almost 7,000 of you have now voted, 6,500 of you, and 25% of you have said you've either had issues with your bank lately with withdrawals or missing money. They don't want you to know about this. So some of you might say, well, my money's protected because of FDIC, right? Federal Deposit Insurance Commission. Now, if you're in the European Union, it's the European Central Bank, the ECB. So the FDIC is supposed to insure over $200,000 for Americans. So no matter what happens, right, the idea is that the FDIC has your back. $200,000, good. Anything above that, though, that's risky, right? That could be lost. We don't know. But we will make sure that we would get money out to you, $200,000. That's insured by the FDIC. In Europe, it's 100,000 euros, thanks to the European Central Bank. But not so fast. And this, folks, perhaps is the real story here, the deep part of this story. Because what happens when the FDIC and the ECB suddenly don't have enough money to cover those people that want their money in cash.
Yeah, so this is the piece, this is the video that Santa Surfing played a small part of, and I was going to search for the original video, but he's done me that favor because he's going to cover a little more than what she covered.
Like, oh, I'm troubled by what's going on. I'm going to go to the bank and get my money, but it's not there. What happens? Oh, the bank used it and sold it or did something ridiculous with my investments. Okay, well, at least the FDIC will take care of me. Where's my money? I want my insurance. Sorry. So the real story here is that the FDIC only has $200 billion in assets on hand to insure over $9 trillion. Mm-hmm. How does that math work? $200 billion to cover $9 trillion.
Well, okay, but if they say that only 4% of currency actually exists in physical form, then I don't know what I did do that math off the top of your head.
Well, so it's a big scam. The banking system's a big scam. And 10 months ago, actually probably a year ago now, I watched a guest that X22 had on. He said, read the book, The Creature of Jekyll Island. And that book pretty much talks about what he said about fractional banking and how they lend out your money. The smaller banks that don't do easy loans, they're a little bit better right now, but I don't trust them either. But, okay, let's keep going.
That means 1.6% of all transactions are covered or insured under this math, right? 200 billion out of 9 trillion means that like 1.63% is covered under the FDIC. Like if everyone decided, hey, I'm sick of this, I'm scared about this, I'm going to the bank because I want my own money.
No, it's absolutely not possible. But, we had been, even before this change in currency rules based on fractional reserve, we knew that less than 4% of all money in the economy existed in paper form.
Right.
That 96% or more of our currency is based on a belief system of binary codes in a computer. So we already knew that. But now it's probably, that percentage seems even lower. I'm not going to do that off the top of my head to embarrass myself. But, yes, this is like reinforcing existing beliefs. It's a scary belief system when we're at the mercy of people who we don't necessarily trust.
So Debbie and Shelley are asking, what about credit unions? Apparently, at one point, we were under the understanding that they were safer, but they're under the same laws as the banks. So I don't think so. I think now here's basically what I believe. We do have the reset, right? The Great Reset, that's the evil one. And this is how they're going to do it. They're trying to force this to happen. Now, when the banks crash, one of the things Santa Surfing has been talking about is that's when silver is going to really go up in value because they have been artificially holding it down. So if you have money, extra money, I would put it into silver. I'm not a, investment advisor or anything like that. It's just my opinion. Okay. Just my opinion. Don't do what I say. Do your own research. And so this is a real scam. It's been a scam for a long time. Now, the good side of that is Nasara. And Nasara is where, let's say everybody's money disappears. I honestly, truly believe we're going to get it back in the future. However, in the short term, it's going to be scary. It's going to be short. Now, do you guys remember when, what was that guy's name? Dana Covington. He was having dreams, forecasting dreams back in 2020. And one of them was that there wasn't any money in the bank, that the dollar bills and then the $5 bill, there weren't going to be dollar bills. There weren't going to be $5. There weren't going to be $10. There were some bigger notes, but that's where you get in trouble because then you're going to, if you only have $100 and you need a loaf of bread, you're going to have to give $100 because you're not going to have the smaller change. This is why when you go to buy silver, the 90% silver, which are the coins from 1964 and before, are 90% silver, and that will have value. And when you go to buy silver, there's none. They don't have it because everybody's doing it. Not everybody, but there's a huge amount of people that seem to be in on it. And actually at my bank, I learned that they were missing, they were out of hundreds and fifties. They had some of the smaller notes, but they were out of hundreds and fifties, which is really odd. And somebody told me this. And, people are pulling their money out. So everybody knows something. And I think that America's waking up. Anyway, let's keep going.
The bottom line is it's a house of cards. And so now we have our first stunning piece of video from the FDIC and a stunning meeting that they held in November that they don't want you to see. So it just leaked, and this video is out. You're going to see members of the FDIC and other panel discussions in this FDIC meeting. It's not just FDIC members. It's lawyers, it's bankers, but they're all around a table having a meeting admitting that a crash is coming. They're saying this. And they're also saying publicly in this meeting, and they all kind of laugh about it, that they don't have any faith in the banks. They also admit on camera that they don't want you to know this because only people who need to know that it's coming should be notified, i.e. the wealthy. They don't want you to know about this. And they say it in this meeting. You common people shouldn't be told because you would take your money out of the banks and then they wouldn't be able to use your money for bail-in purposes to save the banks. We'll let the rich people know about this, just like in March 2020. They made moves because we alerted them. They sold their stocks. They were in the know. They were fine. And you got screwed. And they're saying this in this meeting. This is the FDIC meeting. I'm going to show you a couple of different sound bites here. This is amazing. Watch.
Should be accessible when people need to know, but I don't think you have much hope of reaching a public that doesn't have a professional need to know.
I completely agree with that. I almost think you'd scare the public if you put this out. Like, why are they telling me this? Should I be concerned about my bank? Like, my insurance company doesn't tell me what they're doing with my assets. They just assume they're going to pay my claim. Right? I think you've got to think of the unintended consequences of taking a public that has more full faith and confidence in the banking system than maybe people in this room do.
You hearing them laughing?
They're laughing. That's really stinking condescending. What I hear from that is like, run along, little girl.
Yeah.
You don't need to know. And also, ever heard of FTX? Because, yeah, we don't like that. When we realize that people are doing stuff with our money this untowards. Turns out not a great idea.
So we don't have faith in the banking system in here, and they all laugh. They're like, yeah, none of us do. We're the FDIC.
We can't tell the little people what's really going on here. It will just scare them, and their little brains can't handle it.
Because if they do, oh my God, they might panic, and they might actually want their own money that they worked 40 years of their lives for.
We want them to have full faith and confidence in the banking system. They know the FDIC insurance is there. They know it works. They put their money in. They're going to get their money out. So there's a select crowd of people that are in the institutional side. And if they want to understand this, they're going to find a way to understand this. There's a bunch of law firms represented in this room. There's a bunch of people that charge them by the hour a lot of money to explain this all to them. And it's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And they all have huge staffs. But I would be careful about the unintended consequences of starting to blast too much of this out in the general public.
I wondered whether there are some market tests of whether you're being heard.
Can you believe that? Market tests on whether you're being heard? I wonder who leaked this video.
So
there's no adult in that room. Like, yeah, that's fine.
I think about
anybody there who's like, maybe that's a little unethical. Should we have lunch on that? Should we think about that for a minute?
No, because they keep going. And that's just the first little chunk of this. So you're too stupid. We don't want you to know, the average person to know about this. If you're wealthy and you're plugged in, and you've got a large legal team and you can pay people by the hour to figure all this stuff out, yeah, you can figure it out.
I mean,
the average person
has a point.
Well, he does have a point.
You know,
the system is rigged.
Because like when they announced there was a pandemic, a viral infection, toilet paper was like impossible to get, you know? There was a run on toilet paper. So I get that the fact that there would be a run on the banks, and it could devastate the banks, you know?
It will.
Because people, yeah, totally.
Because of the way that they're structured.
Exactly.
It's a scam. Like, it's a scam. And the great house of cards is going to come down. When the collapse comes, the FDIC admits that they will send out an announcement. So get ready for this. They admit they will send out an announcement and they will tell us not to use money. This is how that's going to go down. They tell us that they plan on telling us on a Friday night. See if you can guess why they would tell us on a Friday night that the banking system has collapsed. Don't worry, don't use any money. We'll figure this out and we'll take care of you or not. We'll tell you on a Friday night. Listen to her explain when this will happen. Watch.
How would we use targeted guarantees to allay concerns about excess cash use? There's a lot of questions here. And so, there are a lot of things we've been thinking about, and what we want to hear from you today is what you think the priorities would be in order to go about setting expectations appropriately in public about how we would execute Title II, so that if and when we do have to have that announcement on Friday night, ideally Friday night, that people are in a position to receive it, understand it, and say, yeah, that works. And we can see how this will happen. Of course, there will be doubters, but there's a lot of things going on.
Okay, thanks for that.
So Friday night, of course, in the banking system is closed. So people all weekend can just be at home freaking out because, oh, wait a minute, I just lost, what's going to happen with my money?
Yeah.
My bank's going, we're in this economic, what the hell are you going to do about my money? It's gone. They're admitting this is coming. And they're saying that they managed to pull their money to safety. The rich people will pull their money to safety ahead of time. But most people were totally screwed because they weren't in the know. This is what happened in 2020, right? Those people got screwed because they weren't in the room where it happened. They weren't Bill Gates. They didn't get the heads up, the phone call from Nancy Pelosi. Here is how he actually admits that. Some people will be screwed by this. Watch.
Spread should respond to good and bad news about the institutions, and it's really important. I mean, it's a little bit conflicted, right? I mean, it's important that people understand they can be bailed in, but you don't want a huge run on the institution. But they're going to be. And it could be an early warning signal to the FDIC and the primary regulators when these things happen. And there may be some other prices. This is similar to what Jay was saying in the market, that you can tell whether people understand who's going to be protected, who isn't going to be protected. It would be, I think, an interesting study to look at the evolution of market prices in a situation like March of 2020, for example, and see whether people understood what might happen.
I might go further than that, Don, because I think that...
So listen to this next guy. This is unbelievable. So this guy just admitted that most people didn't understand because they weren't educated about it. The people that were in the know managed to be okay. The people that got screwed because they weren't in the... we wouldn't give them information. Listen, though, to the next guy.
You look at the evolution, I think we have to sit down and talk to long-term debt investors and make sure that they, as a stakeholder group, fully understand bank debt today is not what it was before. It is not principal protected by design. And I think that expectation, I like how you started off, Betsy, it's all about expectation setting. And I think that is absolutely critical. If that doesn't hold, this whole thing doesn't hold. And so
by design,
I think it's one area to focus on.
So if the expectation doesn't hold, then this whole phony house of cards collapses, is basically what he's saying. Did I read that wrong? If the expectation doesn't hold, the expectation that our banking system is fine,
meaning we need
collapses.
To maintain the ruse.
Yes, we need to maintain the facade, is what he's saying.
Okay.
And not just him. We heard that 4 or 5 times around that table. The same thing was said multiple times about the facade, the phoniness of it all.
Yeah.
The house of cards of it all. So journalist Greg...
if you want... sorry, I was just going to say, while we're still on that point, if you want a really good example of just absolute evil, if you believe that absolute evil exists on the planet, you were just looking at a meeting of it. Because that is just, it's just how just almost flippant and nonchalant they are about a lot of common people are going to get screwed, but as long as the people that need to know can get their money out so we can secure, the rich so that they're fine, then everybody else is an acceptable loss.
But not just the rich, because remember in Cyprus, a lot of people lost billions of dollars. So really not the good people who are billionaires, only the bad that are in on all this.
Right. Yes,
I mean, how do you make that decision?
Yes, when he said, well, a lot of people get hurt, let's do a market study to figure out which of those people
understood it.
Which of those people will get hurt.
Oh, right.
Some of them will get hurt. That's okay. Acceptable loss. Let's do a market study just so we know exactly who. Meaning you have already made that deal with the devil.
Well, and also to Philip's point, the idea that these people are sitting there waiting for these things to unfold and they're going to see that the rich people will be fine. And he brings up the point throughout the meeting where we've got to try to basically convince these rich people just to keep in the system. It's kind of like the Bernie Madoff story again, right? Mm-hmm. Bernie Madoff trying to convince his biggest investors
not to withdraw.
Like if he can keep those 4 or 5 big guys in the game, then he can support this house of cards. And they make mention of this throughout the meeting, that if we've got to keep the big players.
Yeah.
Really? Who's going to stick around for that?
Yeah.
Okay, this will be in the description. So Tucker says this is really dark. So let's see what he's talking about. I couldn't resist.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Did you watch the State of the Union address last night? We do not blame you if you took a pass on that. Tuning in was a grim task. 80-year-old Joe Biden shuffling stiff-legged and bewildered to the podium, a husk held together by Botox and enough amphetamines from the White House doctor to read the slogans written for him by unelected Obama acolytes who actually run the government. This is our president, ladies and gentlemen. It's always pretty hard to believe when you see it. The whole scene is so awful, so degrading to our once proud country, it cannot end soon enough. But the moment was, we will confess, at times pretty amusing. At one point, the eminent TV doctor, Dr. Jill, who really ought to have her own show on Bravo dispensing sassy and empowering medical advice, walked over to Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, and kissed him deeply, square in the mouth without a mask, something that never ever happens at his house. What was that about? There was an unmistakable 1970s suburban Connecticut Tea Party vibe to it. Kind of a John Cheever story, old school stuff, except they let bystanders film the whole thing. So clearly these people are exhibitionists too, not tea. There's a lot going on behind the scenes in the Biden administration, a lot of which we don't want to know more about. But where do these people find the time for hijinks? Dr. Jill, for example, is extremely, extremely busy, way busier than you are. According to her husband, Dr. Jill is working day and night to drag this country out of its medieval ignorance. And that's not an easy task. Watch.
Jill, my wife, who teaches full time, has an expression. I hope I get it right, kid. Any nation that out-educates us is going to out-compete us.
Wait a second. Dr. Jill is teaching, quote, full time? How many hours a week is full time? And where is this happening? What school or university or madrasa is she teaching at? What is she teaching? Can we sign up for her class? How come we didn't know any of this until last night? Any nation that out-educates us is going to out-compete us, says Dr. Jill, and that's a fair point. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. Bravo, Dr. Jill, bravo! The question is, how shall we as a nation respond to Dr. Jill's clarion call for action? Obviously, you need to shut down the schools for an entire year because unionized teachers feel like longer vacations, and then get rid of all standardized tests because racism. That's the solution. It turns out that Dr. Jill, who like an awful lot of community college geniuses from Delaware who've received advanced degrees in, quote, education, she has an awful lot of good ideas. We ought to listen to her more. Unfortunately, we don't often get the chance because she's always teaching. So that really was the highlight of the evening, Dr. Jill making out with the vice president's husband, and then Joe Biden bragging about a job she doesn't actually have. Pretty hard not to find that funny. And then there was Biden himself. Now, the president's mental condition is either scary and depressing, deeply alarming, or absolutely hilarious, depending upon your mood. Last night, for lack of other entertainment options, we decided to find it funny. So take in this steaming pile of word puree and see if you can make sense of it.
As we made clear last week, if China threatens our sovereignty, we will act to protect our country, and we did. But in the past 2 years, democracies have become stronger, not weaker. Autocracy has grown weaker, not stronger. Name me a world leader who changed places with Xi Jinping. Name me one. Name me one.
Okay, that's enough. Cartels in America. We may or may not have to look at this tomorrow. If we have time, we may today. Cartel violence spills over into America. Nations consider military drafts as wars loom. I think, guys, we need to all rise against that if anything like that happens. Okay, Santa Surfing. Thank you, Mida Koch and Nancy McLaughlin, for sharing this. Let me take a look. You guys did some timestamps for me. Well, let's just play it.
Seriously shadow banned on Twitter, so I don't know how much longer I could last on Twitter because I tried to follow Clay Higgins, Congressman Higgins, and I'll share his bomb tweet, which most of you have already seen. But it says you're unable to follow more people at this time. I'm like, what the heck?
Kickstart your metabolism today and start working towards the experience life as it should be.
For Pain Absolve, RxPill.enough notes barely. Sammy orders the 11th by Congress. Today's post is Congress threatens Twitter executives with arrest, scorching first day hearing. These are the witnesses, the Twitter executives that got questioned by Congress today. Wow, they were a little shocked because they're so used to having a Democrat Congress being throwing softball questions and interrupting Republicans if a Republican had a comment or a question. Not this time. We had James Baker, Gotti, Roth, and Navaroli. These four, look at the body language on Gotti. She was this pompous, like, I'm a legal counsel for Twitter. And she was the one that actually made the decision to ban President Trump from Twitter. No, but her body language was like this the entire time, kind of like looking down, not looking up, didn't want to even give answers. It was really horrid for them. And it's really kind of like poetic justice for us. So let me kind of go through some of the highlights, or definitely highlights for the conservatives, MAGA, Republicans, lowlights for the liberals and Twitter peeps. And about the state of delusion speech from Biden last night. It was so filled with so many lies that even the New York Post posted this headline: New York Post president tells so many fibs during speech we can't keep count. And look at the title, guys. Joe Liden. Oh my gosh. I had to literally pinch myself to see if it was actually true. I had to go and look at the article, and then I had to go ahead and use a different browser to see if it was legit. And it was. Everyone that listened to Biden's horrid speech wasted 75 minutes of their lives that they will never, ever get back. Oh my gosh, it was so bad. He took credit for President Trump's accomplishments. He talked about things that he had initiated, like the price of medicine for senior citizens. That was all Trump, but he was filled like lies after lies after lies, even to the point where Marjorie Taylor Greene in the chamber, she even yelled liar, guys. And you know what I thought was interesting too? I was looking at Joe Biden's Twitter feed. He somehow was tweeting at the same time while he was giving his speech. I know he's got handlers. I know many of you might say, well, come on, Santa, Well, I just thought that was interesting. Okay. Now, so this is now mind you, this is a hearing for the Hunter Biden laptop. This is a hearing on the Biden criminal family. This is the first day of getting down to the bottom of that Hunter Biden laptop information. And because this hearing is exposing that laptop, these hearings could and would reveal so much deep dive information that you've been digging on. So I'm going to just kind of play some highlights why they're doing this. Again, I think it's because they want to see, why didn't any of the world know about this? We've learned from Twitter files, right? From Matt Taibbi. And now that was back in December, and now they used a lot of that content from those Twitter files in these hearings. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene, and man, did she unleash on Yoel Roth. Well, she unleashed on all of them. Check this out.
Baker, Miss Gaddy, Mr. Roth, and Miss Navaroli, you can consider your speech canceled during my time because you canceled mine. You see, you permanently banned my personal Twitter account, and it was my campaign account also. So let's talk about election interference, shall we? January 2nd, 2002, you permanently banned my Twitter account. This was the account that I would put my campaign ads on, raise money on, fight back when attacked with lies, and be able to talk to my voters in my district. But you banned it. And then let me explain. My account was not reinstated until November 21st, 2022. That was after my election on November 8th. You know, at your company or your former company where you worked, Twitter employees, over 98% of them donate to Democrats. So while you coordinated with DHS, the FBI, the CIA, our government, and outside groups to permanently ban, shadow ban conservative Americans and candidates like me and the former president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, you were censoring and wrongfully violating our First Amendment free speech rights. Guess what? None of you hold security clearances. None of you are elected, and none of you represent 750,000 people like I do. On Twitter, people could question elections such as 2016, saying Hillary won, but in 2020, no one could question elections saying Trump won. You abuse the power of a large corporation, big tech, to censor Americans. And you want to know something? Guess what? I'm so glad that you're censored down. I'm so glad you've lost your jobs. Thank God Elon Musk bought Twitter. And you know what? Let's talk about something a little bit further. It's amazing to me, Mr. Roth, as the head and trust of safety at Twitter, your ability, or should I say inability, to remove child porn. Now, here's something that disgusts me about you. In your doctoral dissertation entitled Gay Data, you argued that minors should have access to Grindr, an adult male gay hookup app. Minors? Really? You know, Elon Musk took over Twitter and he banned 44,000 accounts that were promoting child porn. You permanently banned my Twitter account, but you allowed child porn all over Twitter. Twitter had become a platform, you said, connecting queer young adults. Wow. You also wrote on Twitter in 2010, can high school students ever meaningfully consent to sex with their teachers? In 2021, while you were the director of trust and safety on Twitter, an underage boy and his mother announced a lawsuit against Twitter because Twitter was benefiting from and refused to remove a lewd video featuring this boy and another minor. That is repulsive. But you violated me. What were my tweets? Okay, let's talk about them. I was talking about the deaths being reported on VAERS. By the way, that's on the CDC website. I was also saying that I didn't think any entity should enforce a non-FDA approved vaccine or mask. Guess what? A lot of people agreed with me, but you called that COVID misinformation. By the way, I'm a member of Congress and you're not. I also said the controversial COVID-19 vaccines should not be forced on our military. You want to know something? Republicans stopped that in the NDAA.
Ladies, time has expired.
And your time has expired. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh my gosh. Wow. She went there. Jaw-dropping, I'm sure, for the Twitter executives, but jaw-dropping for those listening to the hearing thinking, oh my gosh, this is a different Congress. It was completely different. And there was an interruption when it came down to some deep questions and deep conversations, like she had brought up on the child pornography and the child trafficking. Unbelievable. And then we have Lauren Boebert. Now, she was towards the end. I'm kind of mixing some of this up because I want to save the good stuff for later on. This is good too, but she unleashed, and it was about election interference.
Chair recognizes Ms. Boebert for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Matt Taibbi, a respected reporter who published much of the Twitter files, said, quote, Twitter's contact with FBI was constant and pervasive, as if it were a subsidiary. Now, I want to better understand why he would suggest that. Mr. Roth, while at Twitter, how many meetings did you have with the FBI?
I couldn't say for sure, but I would
More
say
than 10?
That's a
More
reasonable
than 20?
estimate. I couldn't say for sure.
More than 50?
That seems a bit high.
Many meetings with the FBI. Well, we know how many FBI agents worked at Twitter while you were there?
I don't believe any active FBI
Former
agents.
FBI agents. How many worked there while you were there?
I'm aware of perhaps 2.
Well, we know of at least 9 because they started the BU group chat, BU for Bureau. Now, Mr. Roth, did the FBI ever ask you to share information like users' communication data without going through proper legal channels?
No, they did not, and I would have refused if they had.
That's correct. I see that you denied Agent Chan's request for access to Twitter's data feed. What's sick isn't that you would deny it. It's that the FBI would even ask you for the private data of American citizens without going through legal channels of the law. Now, I want to remind you, Mr. Roth, that you are under oath. Did the FBI ever ask you to do anything that was illegal or questionably legal?
I'm not a lawyer, but certainly not to the best of my recollection or knowledge.
Now, from the hearing that I've been a part of today, it's almost impossible to tell where the FBI ends and where Twitter begins. We have Mr. Baker here, a former FBI agent, and there seems to be a revolving door between the FBI and Twitter itself. Even Mr. Baker said that there was no collusion with the federal government and Twitter. But Mr. Baker, that's you. You are the collusion between the federal government and the FBI. And now with it, this is such a problem because we're seeing censorship all over. Mr. Roth, Miss Gaddy, did either of you approve the shadow banning of my account at Lauren Boebert? Yes or no?
No, I did not.
Not to the best of my recollection.
Well, let me refresh your memory because on March 12th, 2021, and Mr. Roth, I know you looked at it because Fascist Twitter 1.0 had a public interest exceptions policy, which means for members of Congress to be shadow banned, it had to go before you, Mr. Roth. So I'll ask again, did you shadow ban my account? Yes or no?
Again, not to the best of my recollection.
So the answer is, Mr. Roth, yes, you did. I found out last night from Twitter staff that you suppressed my account for this tweet. It's a freaking joke about Hillary Clinton being angry that she couldn't rig her election. It's a joke. But in response, being the sinister overlords that you all are, you placed a 90-day account filter so I could not be found. And now we see here that Twitter staff said the visibility filter on my account excluded me from top searches, prevented notifications for non-followers, and much more. This is considered an aggressive visibility filter. You silenced members of Congress from communicating with their constituents. You silenced me from communicating with the American people over a freaking joke. Now, who the hell do you think that you are? Election interference? Yeah, I would say that that was taking place because of you four sitting here. The Hunter Biden laptop story was suppressed. A sitting member of Congress was suppressed. A sitting president was banned from Twitter. You know, I bet that Putin is sitting in the Kremlin wishing he had as much election interference as you four here today. We've heard about threats to democracy. Well, what about shutting down a duly elected member of Congress? This is fundamental to our nation's governance, and you all attacked that very foundation. 230 protections? Well, those are for publishers, not for editors. And it's clear you were not acting as publishers, you were acting as editors. And Mr. Chairman, I think it's far past time that we remove 230 protections for big tech platforms who are abusing this protection. And let me just say, I'm not angry for myself. I'm not angry because I was silenced. I can reach out to Elon and to his staff, and I can see what's happened. And I can sit here today and hold you all in account. I am angry for the millions of Americans who were silenced because of your decisions, because of your actions, because of your collusion with the federal government. They can't reach out to Elon. They can't sit here today and hold you into account. We don't know where the FBI ends and Twitter begins. But I do want to thank
Mr. Chairman, we're over
for
17
firing
seconds now.
you four and saving free speech and even
You know, Gotti and Yoel, they're probably doing this inside like, I want to go back to mommy's basement, please. Get me out of here. Are you planning for your retirement to do the things you ultimately want?
Words, Representative Ocasio-Cortez.
And when we talk about bending, it's my understanding from another deposition that there were actual alarms that would go off if someone would access Trump's Twitter account other than, I believe, the CEO?
It was my understanding that alarms would ring within Twitter if the account was accessed outside of a select group of individuals who had access to that account.
Are you aware of this being an ongoing practice for other individuals' Twitter accounts?
At my time at Twitter, the former President Donald Trump's account was the only account that I did not have access to.
Okay, so we know that there weren't individual actors running around Twitter setting off alarms every other day. Is that correct?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And no wonder President Trump was sometimes tweeting early in the morning just to wake him up. And they probably heard those alarms and it was like, oh my gosh, everybody panic. President Trump is tweeting right now. Oh my goodness gracious, how obsessed they were with him, right? Obsessed to take him down in any possible way. Now, this is a combo clip on Yoel Roth between Jim Jordan, two other Republican congressmen, and listen to how he contradicts himself. I mean, it's like, man, he should have put mint on his shoes because he did literally stick his foot in his mouth a few times and did a little backpedaling. And it's like, oh, brother.
The night before, FBI Special Agent Elvis Chan sends you an email. The email says this: heads up, I will be sending a teleporter link for you to download 10 documents. It's not spam. Please confirm receipt when you get it. 2 minutes later, 6:24 p.m., you respond back, received and downloaded, thanks. What were those 10 documents?
Twitter didn't give me access to my laptop, but Special Agent Chan has said publicly, and the FBI has confirmed that those documents did not relate to Hunter Biden, and that's my recollection of them.
What did they relate to?
My interactions with Agent Chan and with the FBI almost entirely focused on what the FBI called malign foreign interference, things like Russian troll farms and Iranian involvement in the elections, not on any type of domestic
Any of the
activity.
information on there classified?
No, sir, I do not hold a security clearance, and so I would not have received any classified information.
Who does hold a security clearance? I'll just go to the second email here. I'm just curious about this. What I propose is that 30 days out from the election, this is another email to you from Mr. Chan. 30 days, we get temporary clearances. You pick who they are. Who were the people at Twitter who had a security clearance?
To be honest, sir, I'm not sure, and we never ultimately followed through on this plan to get temporary.
You may have collaborated with U.S. intelligence community regarding stories that y'all didn't want the public to see. So namely, what we refer to as the Hunter Biden laptop story that ran in the New York Post. So I'll ask you, Mr. Roth, did you receive 10 confidential documents from Special Agent of the FBI, Elvis Chan, the night before the Hunter Biden laptop story ran?
Yes.
10 confidential documents.
I want to be clear that my statement to the FEC does not suggest that the FBI told me it would involve Hunter Biden. That's a popular reading of that declaration, but it was not my intent. I think there is a coincidence there, and I really can't speak as to how that came about.
Yeah, it's really coincidental. One last question. Did the CIA or the other governmental agency ever ask Twitter to look at something that violated Twitter's policy?
I don't recall specific outreach by the CIA specifically.
Other government agency is what it was called in the Twitter files.
Yes, Twitter regularly received reports from government requesting review under our rules.
So the other government agency, that one, did they ever request information regarding violations of Twitter's policies? The CIA.
Gentlemen, time's expired, but please answer the question.
Thank the chairman.
Again, I don't recall specific contact from the CIA.
Oh, Yoel, he had a pen in his hand. I kid you not, I think he was on the verge of biting it and gnawing into it because he was so fidgety and so scared. Yeah, these are not the pompous ones that were on Twitter, those Twitter files that we saw. And it's like, yeah, let's do this, Elvis, no problem, and now all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, Clay Higgins. So he dropped some bombs, just bombs. You can share that link, this clip right here. Check out what he says. Oh my God. They're like 3 huge bombs talking about election interference, what they did, and he was just very blunt about it. Check this out.
Chair recognizes Mr. Higgins for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to be yielding some time to my colleague, Mr. Jordan, here momentarily. But for the record, Mr. Baker, Ms. Gotti, Mr. Roth, Mr. Navaroli, are you here under the advice of counsel, and do you have counsel present?
Yes, sir.
That was a yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I do.
Yes, I was subpoenaed
That's
to
good to
appear.
know. I'm glad you all have counsel present. Mr. Chairman, for the for submission for the record, I'd like consent to submit the Twitter files dated December the 8th, posted by the New York Post regarding the suppression of conservative commentators. Like that submitted.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to also submit for the record a timeline of events with cited sources outlining strong evidence of the Biden family organized criminal actions would certainly indicate that we've crossed the threshold of reasonable suspicion. I'd like this timeline submitted for the record.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, where is that from, that timeline?
Timeline in my hand, boss. I'll get it to you shortly. Bottom line is that the FBI had the Biden crime family laptop for a year. They knew it was leaking. They knew it would hurt the Biden campaign. So the FBI used its relationship with Twitter to suppress criminal evidence being revealed about Joe Biden 1 month before the 2020 elections. You, ladies and gentlemen, interfered with the United States of America 2020 presidential election, knowingly and willingly. That's the bad news. It's going to get worse because this is the investigation part. Later comes the arrest part. Your attorneys are familiar with that. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to spend 5 hours with these ladies and gentlemen doing depositions surely yet to come. But for right now, I'll yield the balance of my time to my colleague.
Yay! Arrest! Absolutely.
You know they wanted to do this. The Twitter executives, they wanted to do this. They were crying and in shock, and they were just like, I don't know. I can't believe this is happening, guys. Yeah, it did happen because they did do that. That clip was so big that even Daily Caller puts out a article on the GOP representative threatens to arrest former Twitter executives. Oh my gosh. And then Joel Roth, he says, let me go to this one here. Former Twitter executive claims censorship actually creates more speech. Okay.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, my gosh. Oh. And then he says, then he regrets the Hunter Biden laptop censorship under hacked material policy. He regrets it. Hacked material policy. They changed the rules as time went along. They censor you. They censor me. They censor anybody who talked about it, said anything. You had to write in code. Remember, you had to put, like, you couldn't even say Hunter Biden laptop. You had to use emojis or what have you. And I wonder how many alarms they had set off for you. Or,
you know what though? He doesn't regret the pedo stuff, does he? Or wanting to groom kids for homosexuality, does he?
your accounts, right? I mean, if they had it for President Trump, how many did they have for us? So it's all just first day because the bigger stuff will come out because it is on the Hunter Biden laptop. And Hunter Biden did submit his laptop as evidence. And so it's like, okay, I'm caving. And then here is Representative Comer's statements. Check this out, guys. Very interesting. This marker, these two markers on February 8th, which would be today. Panic. Oh, I'll use this one first. USS, United States Secret Service on high alert, and panic in D.C. Leverage depleted, POTUS freed. Extreme chatter Q. Thank you, 118th Congress. We needed this day. The MAGA Republicans, we really, really needed this.
We sure did. Okay, we're at an hour and a half already. I'm trying to shorten my videos. I'm not doing a very good job. So I'm not going to keep going. I've got more, but I'm not going to keep going because it's too long. So there is another clip on the money, and I'm going to watch that beforehand. So I have literally gone back to YouTube and decided that I am going to I want you guys to go and I want you guys to do Third Culture Patriot, okay? And here you'll find my Twitter accounts. I haven't uploaded anything yet. Oh, darn, I actually did upload. I'm live here. I didn't know I had clicked that. Uh-oh, hope I don't lose the channel right off the bat. So I'm going to be doing short clips during the day in order to start growing the channels. And I'll probably be sending people over to Rumble as well. I did not click that. Uh-oh. Okay, so anyway, that's my new logo, guys. And then the other one is, so there's two of them. And so the way you can find me is at Third Culture Patriot, or with 2 T's or with 1 T. That's the other account. Oh my God, I'm live on both. Here, let me show you my new logo. Can you see it? No. Oh well, you can see it there. So go subscribe to me here. And then my Rumble channel, if you guys will help me grow it, I would so appreciate it. It will help me get, people don't like to go live with, be interviewed if people don't have, I don't think it's, very nice, but unless you have a large audience. So you guys will help me do that. So what you're going to do for Rumble is you're going to go rumble.com. And you can go in here. You don't have to have an account, but it helps if you do, because then when I do a live video, it'll go to your email. So that's going to pull me up, okay? And this is the one. So while I'm live, if I get taken down off of Facebook, you just come here and you click, and then it's going to put it there. Now the other one that I want you guys to go to is to Telegram. And you'll go t.me/Third Culture Patriot Chat. I have the channel and I have chat. Everybody does a lot of sharing in, I don't know if y'all can see that, but it doesn't always show it. Okay, and then I'm going to suggest, what's coming. If you go to preparewithtcp.com, I'm going to tell you guys to really, really, really stock up. They have payment plans, guys. And so if you go here, like you see, no electricity, like we just had in Austin, you'll see power, heating, and lighting, all these different things. There's also these fire, where's that fire thing? Vesta self-powered indoor space heater and stove by Instafire. And these are candles that heat it up. So this looks very, very interesting. I have not ordered this or tried it yet, but it really, really looks interesting. Also, I'm going to tell you, water's very important. I have a friend who has one of those Kangen things. She had no electricity. She had no water. This is a gravity filtered water. And it's on sale again. It's $199.95. It's almost $100 off. This is good for 5,000 gallons, and you can always order an extra one. And this one's on sale as well to order an extra one, which will give you 10,000 gallons. So just take care of your water needs. Water is so important. And then you can go to emergency food, long-term food storage, short-term food storage, and you'll find a lot of sales on here too. Once again, they do payment plans. They are patriots. All right. I will see you guys tomorrow.